Hello, and welcome to another episode of YA Book Chat. Today, I am very excited to bring to you an interview that I did with author Melissa De La Cruz. Melissa De La Cruz is a #1 New York Times, #1 Publishers Weekly, and #1 IndieBound best-selling author of many critically acclaimed and award-winning novels for readers of all ages. This includes Alex and Eliza, The Descendants, The Witches of East End, and Blue Bloods. She has also most recently published a new YA novel called The Queen's Assassin. Her more than 30 books have also topped the USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and Los Angeles Times bestseller lists and have been published in over 20 countries. Today, I am happy to be interviewing Melissa about her latest project, DC Comics' newest YA graphic novel, Gotham High. I did recently do an episode about Gotham High, so if you would like to, you can go back a couple episodes and find that and take a listen. I would also like to take the time right now to say thank you to DC Comics for introducing me to this brand new graphic novel and allowing me to have Melissa on the show. Well, without any further ado, here is my interview with author Melissa De La Cruz. Thank you so much for being here today, Melissa. It's very nice having you here.
Great to be here.
Can you just tell me a little bit about how you got involved with this project with DC Comics and what kind of drew you to writing the story?
DC reached out to my agent and said that they were starting a young adult and middle grade line, and they wanted to know if I would be interested in maybe reimagining some DC universe characters in the teen space. And I said, yeah, let me think about it. I just kind of finished Descendants, so I was kind of in kind of a reimagining, retelling space. And when we talked a little bit more, they said, I asked them, I said, well, what characters, kind of are available? And they said, well, a couple of the authors that we've asked have kind of chosen, maybe some characters people don't know that well, so that they can reinvent them or bring them kind of to the forefront. But they said that we would really love somebody to take on Batman or Superman. And I said, oh my God, I would love to do Batman. I couldn't believe it was, kind of still available. I feel like Batman, kind of like Maleficent is like one of these iconic American pop culture characters. And, what an honor and a privilege and a treat to be able to work, with, one of the greatest superheroes. So I was really excited, especially thinking I could do it in high school. And then my mind started, kind of working. And then I said, oh my God, he's a billionaire, right? A billionaire would be the most fun, especially with kind of the stuff that I write about. And then I had a couple more ideas, and I said, what if he was, from Hong Kong? His mom was from Hong Kong. I just wanted to modernize it a little bit. I wanted to keep the template of Batman, but, and that's why retellings are kind of fun, because you need to stay within kind of the boundaries, but then you can reinvent and reimagine things, while still staying with the Batman template. I think my first idea of Batman was a little too Chuck Bass of Gossip Girl. And after a meeting with the editors, they said, at some point, kind of at his soul, he still has to be Bruce Wayne, who's kind of broody and broken and alone. So you got to kind of keep that, he's not this, kind of outgoing hard guy.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I did really love about Gotham High was all the things that you brought into it that kind of were the little changes, like having his family from Hong Kong and the fact that he is Chinese American, just a couple of different things like that. And that was just one thing that really drew me in the story, that I really was like, oh, that's so great to have that kind of twist in it. Another aspect like that is also, I liked that you, instead of having Alfred be the butler, he was Bruce's uncle. And I really liked that familial connection that you created there. What kind of drew you to change that aspect of it specifically?
I just kind of thought, since he's in high school, he kind of needs a mentor. And I thought it would be kind of weird if, to be the 17-year-old and have, kind of this older butler situation. It then kind of sit right for me. Like I thought, he obviously needs an adult taking care of him. And I thought, what if, it's Uncle Alfred, because he's kind of has that kind of relationship anyway, but kind of to make it, I think, more natural for a teenager to listen to an adult is actually his uncle. I can kind of see, like, if you were a teen billionaire and he was your butler, you'd just be like, whatever.
Right.
Whatever I want, nobody can stop me. So
Exactly. Talk to me about a little bit about some of the traditional Batman ideas that's already out there that you pulled into it. Like, I know, for example, when I was reading it at the very beginning, just that little glimpse that we got of Dick Grayson. And then there was a lot of different things like that kind of scattered throughout. What pieces did you decide you wanted to pay homage to?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like, and I do regret we cut out a little bit more of Dick in the story. He had a little bit of a bigger part in the end, and there just wasn't space for it. We kind of felt like we hadn't developed it, and he couldn't just come out of nowhere. So it was kind of nice to have that moment in the beginning where we see him. You can't do Batman without Robin.
True.
And it was kind of funny because I had to think about Batman's usual allies, and of course Commissioner Gordon is a big character in the Batman world. And again, I thought, okay, he's not a crime fighter yet. He doesn't have to work with the mayor and the commissioner. And so I thought, what if it was Principal Gordon? So that was really fun. But it was interesting because when we were talking with DC, I said, oh, maybe I'll, brush up on all the Batman lore. And they said, no, we actually don't want that. Don't read anything. Don't, we want your, new reimagining. So I said, okay. So it was really interesting because they were very interested in keeping it open. But, I think, as my husband said, what American doesn't know Batman lore? We all know the story. So, so I wanted to put in things that happened. One of the things that happened is he saw his parents being killed in front of him, and then reimagining what that's like. I think something just, similar happened to Kim Kardashian, where this home invaders broke into her Paris apartment and, tied her up in the bathroom, and she fortunately survived. But I thought, well, what if it went really wrong? And I wanted to have something where it wasn't gory, but it was still like very tragic. Like his mom died because she couldn't get her insulin, and he was just so frozen he couldn't help his parents, which is part of the Batman psyche, the feeling helpless while your parents are murdered in front of you.
Yeah, that's never a good situation. Nobody should ever have to experience that. What do you think? So again, this is of course geared towards young adults, for a new generation who maybe they know about Batman but haven't been as exposed to it as much as older people have been. And so in thinking about that, writing with the YA style, what is the most difficult aspect about writing for a teenage audience, and how did you kind of bring your specific YA writing style into Gotham High?
It's hard to answer that question because I don't feel like it's a challenge to write for a teen audience. When I started writing in the YA genre, it felt very natural and kind of felt like the thing I was best at. So, and I think I always say, the reason why I write for teens is because when you're 17, the guy on the motorcycle, the bad boy in the motorcycle is so great, and he's like the heartthrob. But when you're 34, the bad boy in the motorcycle is kind of a loser. So,
yeah. That is very true.
You just want, I love that part of being young and you're kind of free, and and everything's new and exciting. And I think, I kind of write for myself. I mostly entertain myself. So, I kind of thought, like, this is what I would want to see in a YA Batman. So, they said if you write for YA, you have like an internal teen clock. And I think mine kind of stopped at 14. So I think I think YA writers are really in tune with that part of themselves that never grows up. So yeah, I just kind of, C.S. Lewis said, either you write for one specific child or you write for the child in you. You don't write for the children, in air quotes. So I think that's what I do a lot, is like I write for, the teen me. and
That's
hopefully other people like it.
Yeah, well, that's great. I definitely feel like YA, it's probably something that, yeah, totally like innate inside of you. Cause I know I pretty much only read YA fiction. That's all I read. So, and it's funny because I'll read it and I'll, be like, man, was I like that when I was a teenager? Like all of these, then I'm like, yeah, I probably really was. And so, but yeah, you have to be really in tune with your inner teenager. So, but I think you do a great job of that. I loved it. So, in the story, without giving too much away, Bruce and Jack are more or less friends, but we all know that eventually Jack grows up to be the Joker, and he's one of Batman's greatest villains. So, at this point in the story, though, where do you think he's kind of at in his life? When do you think is kind of his turning point to being the villain? While he's in high school, or maybe after high school? In your version of the story, what would your version be?
I wanted to write about how, somebody who maybe had a lot of potential to be something else, how that kind of the tragedy of and I wanted to show that they were friends and they were almost the same, kind of had the same sense of humor, the same kind of like chill. And then, like something terrible, he was in love. I feel like I'm spoiling things, but something terrible happens or something that kind of breaks him a little, and then so maybe instead of healing and repairing, instead he kind of goes down this darker path. I would say he's still a little far from that. They're both kind of young. I don't really, for me, Batman and the Joker are kind of adults, which for me means they're like in their late 30s.
Yeah.
They're kind of fully formed at that time. I think right now they're so young, so you just see, like maybe Bruce, has that kind of instinct for social justice in him to protect people, and whereas Jack maybe has a little bit more of a selfish instinct, but it's still pretty early. I would say they don't really come into themselves until they're 30. So they've got 15 more years.
They've got a long way to go yet.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of relationships, something that I really loved was how you have kind of a love triangle in this story with Jack and Bruce and Selena. Do you feel like, because okay, so anytime, any like version of Batman that I've watched, movies or even the old TV show, there was always this relationship kind of with Batman and Catwoman. They kind of had this like, and Bruce and Selena. And so I love that you explored that in this as well. And do you think, this is just kind of a fun question, do you think Batman and Catwoman are kind of meant to be together, like soulmates?
I think when I was writing this, I think the Batman and Catwoman wedding issue had just come out, so I said, oh, they do get that. They do end up, okay. So, I kind of like, rules. And if that's canon, I would say yes.
I've always kind of assumed that they would end up and get married together, especially because I prefer the Christian Bale Batman, where at the end he and Catwoman are together in Paris and Alfred's kind of sitting over there on the end. I'm like, yep, that's about right for me.
Oh, that's my favorite Batman, definitely.
I love it.
And I think that's my favorite Batman movie. So yes, definitely. The ending in Paris is the best.
It is. It's perfect. So within the story, like I said, we have the love triangle between the three of them. So why is it, do you think Selena kind of feels caught in the middle of the two of them and can't really make a decision? I mean, is it just kind of like, bad boy, good boy, which one do I choose? Or maybe more complicated based on her backstory?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because Bruce kind of comes back from being away, in the beginning of the book, he's kind of kicked out of his fancy boarding school and has to go to the local public high school where he kind of sees some people who were in his life before. And, we don't kind of reveal that Selena was part of his background and Selena, I think, has moved on, something terrible happened to the Waynes, the parents died, they shipped off the kid to boarding school, she never saw him again. So she had to move on too. And so, her kind of new crowd is Jack. So when Bruce comes back, it kind of, does she choose between her past or her present, and then what's her future, So I think that's something which I think, I just thought, I mean, if your old boyfriend came back, and you were with your new boyfriend,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I thought of where she was, kind of emotionally, and I do think she liked both of them. I don't know if she liked them equally. I don't know. I think it's more like, you're trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the YA love triangle trope.
It definitely is. I have read many a YA books where there has been a girl who was like in between two boys. Which one do I pick?
Oh, yeah.
It is perfect. It's great. I mean, that's how it is when you're growing up as a teenager,
I know. We have so many boyfriends. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Everybody says we're just trying to have one, and everybody in the book says two. So it's a fantasy.
All right. Yeah, it's right. It's fine. Oh, man. So I wanted to ask too about your collaboration with Thomas Patilli on the illustrations. Oh my goodness, when I was looking through it, I absolutely loved his illustrations. I felt like they fit so well with the story that you were telling. What was it like working with him and kind of putting all that together?
It was great. It was really seamless. We went through a bunch of character drafts, and he nailed through. I would send kind of notes and some images and say, this is who I think Bruce kind of looks like. This is who I think Selena looks like. Jack, for some reason, we could not get right for a while. And it was fun. I just found out when we were doing interviews that Thomas said, I finally gave him my haircut, and it kind of worked. It was so funny. So there's a little bit of Thomas in the book too. Yeah, so it was like I would send, I had some very specific images for certain things, like what Selena wears to the party, what Bruce's study looks like, Chinatown, and then so those things that I really, really cared about, I would send images and then we would kind of use that. And then I think for Poison Ivy, I really wanted to have her look a certain way, kind of like a K-pop star. So I sent a lot of K-pop photos. It was really great. And, he brought them to life, and the colors were amazing. And, it was kind of interesting. As we went through the process, there would be more and more people on the email. First it was just me, and then it was Thomas, and then the letterer, and then the inker. It was really fun.
It was absolutely a treat looking at all of his illustrations. And like you just mentioned too, the coloring was fantastic as well. Everything just really pops. And something fun that I noticed I loved, and I was curious how much of this you had input on, or if he just kind of took it and ran with it. Because I loved that he had Gotham High, the home of the bats. So there's that little thing. And then in one of the scenes, they're in class, and on the board it says bat dissection. And then in Principal Gordon's office, she has the mug on her desk that's got the bat symbol on it. I think though, my favorite was when Bruce is having the party and they're playing the video game. And it's essentially Batman versus the Joker in the video game. I was like, that is so fantastic. Was that kind of all just him doing that? Did you have any influence on that part too?
The Home of the Bats, we said that came from, I think, the first ever gathering of all the YA and middle grade authors of the line. And I remember I was talking to Ridley Pearson, who I think was doing Superman and Batman, middle grade. And we were talking to everybody, and I can't remember if Ridley said it or Mariko or somebody, but we said, if we're going to do Gotham, they're all going to be, going to Gotham High or Gotham Middle School, it's got to be, what's the team? They're the Bats. So that actually came from a bunch of authors.
Perfect.
I remembered it when I did my book. I was like, oh, this is for you, Ridley. And everything else, no, that was Thomas. Mine was just the first Easter egg.
But I love too, because, he had all of that in the illustrations, but then you had in the dialogue some great quotes too that kind of show who they're each going to be in the future, because Bruce says to Poison Ivy, oh, it's like a bat cave in here. And so there's that. Alfred tells Bruce he's going a bit vigilante. Jack gets called a clown. And then, there's a couple lines about Selena and a cat having 9 lives. Was it kind of easy to come up with that dialogue, to sneak that in there and make sure that was it kind of like you had in your head, oh, I want to make sure that I get these quotes in here so that people kind of have these little connections? Or was it just like, well, I'm just, writing it in, kind of fun thing?
There was so much more, Leah. And they actually pulled a lot back. And I had a lot more stuff that I wanted, because I was really into the Easter eggs and really paying homage to the characters and to the iconic universe, because I really like that when I read those things. So I would say that's maybe a quarter of what got left in. There was a lot.
I really enjoy that too. I've read a couple of books that are retellings, YA books, and I just absolutely love when authors just put all those Easter eggs in and pull from all the different stories. It just makes it so much more rich, and more fun to read when you've got all that extra background and from the story that's what's already been established, but then you're creating something new. And it's just, it's a lot of fun to read that.
I will remind my editor of that on the next one.
Okay, great.
About these things. There's some big things at the end that they took out, and I was kind of like, fine.
Oh. So at the end, I wanted to ask about this too. When I read through it and the story finished, at the very end, I saw that there was a page with like suicide prevention resources. Was that something, and and I'm not going to kind of spoil it and say what happens and why that's in there, but was that something that DC just kind of did on their own and that they do, or did you have any say in that either?
I think we had talked about making sure we were really careful.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make it clear in the end that, that's not what she was doing.
Right.
We had a much darker storyline in the beginning that didn't even involve Selena, but that I just didn't want to do. And, but then in the end, we had that kind of dramatic thing. So, I think that was, from a conversation about just being, careful when we talk about these things that, that the kids, it's not really entertainment. So I wanted to make it clear that wasn't, in the way that Thomas and I kind of shot it, that, that that's not what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it is great, to have that in there as a resource at the end too, just in case, because there are so many teens who struggle with depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts. My cousin, when she was a teenager, tried to commit suicide. And so it's really hard and it's a really difficult thing. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I turned the page and I saw that, because I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. It was great to have that in there.
Yeah, no, just to remind kids, that there's hope and, you can call and definitely. Yeah. I think I feel very strongly about using it in any kind of entertainment, kind of thing. So it didn't even occur to me. I was like, wait, what? People, no,
It's always good to be careful. You never know how people interpret things. So, all right. So if DC Comics were to give you the option and say, hey, we want you to do this again, and maybe they already have, I don't know, but who would be what would be your next dream character? I would love to do a story about this character.
I kind of thought of it as the 3 of them. So I think the second book, hopefully will be a Jack book. So.
Oh, nice. That would be fun. Oh, I also noticed, I didn't mention this earlier, on his jacket, how he always had that Joker symbol on his jacket. Mm-hmm. It was fun. It was a good little ad there by the illustrator. All right. So we have been focusing on Gotham High because that was just released, but I do want to ask you, at least I have one burning question from your new YA novel that came out this year, The Queen's Assassin. I'm actually going to be covering that on my podcast in June. Already recorded the episode. Yeah. So I already recorded it even, and I'm all set. So I absolutely loved that book. And I do want to ask though, because I'm not going to say any spoilers.
Hmm.
I was curious though, because the ending kind of a little bit open. And so I wasn't sure, like I could see it being like there being another story after this, or I could see it being, nope, that's just the end and how we're going to leave it. Is it going to be a standalone or is it going to be a series?
It's a duology right now.
Ooh.
The second book is coming out next February also.
Oh, fabulous. That makes me really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I read that book and I read the ending and I'm like, well, I could live with this ending, but it would be great if there were more. Well, that's really good to know. And for everybody listening, if you have not read The Queen's Assassin, you'll need to go and read that one too, because it's fantastic. And that just came out in February of this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that is a great story. Well, do you have anything else? So you're working on that one, the second book for that series. Is there anything else that you're allowed to say or talk about? Any other upcoming projects?
I have a Little Women retelling called Joe and Laurie, which is coming out in June, that I co-wrote with my best friend Margaret Stoll. So that was really fun, and that is coming out in June.
Nice. Well, I'm definitely going to read that one. I love Little Women. It's
Yay!
so good. Yay. All right. Well, I think that is all. Thank you so much for being here today and chatting with me, and fantastic having you here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yay.
You're welcome. Thank you so much to special guest Melissa de la Cruz for coming on YA Book Chat today. And also thank you to DC Comics as well. Please be sure to check out the show notes for today's episode, where you can find links to Melissa de la Cruz, Thomas Patilli, DC Comics, and Gotham High. And if you would, please go ahead and subscribe, and leave a positive review for YA Book Chat. YA Book Chat is edited and hosted by me, Leah Stuhler.